You are now listening to the fastest show on iSports Radio. My name is Derek Kinsey Jr. Welcoming you to another lap of extra mile for today, April 21st, 2022. And spring is now well and truly in the air, and so is the smell of racing fuel and tires. We're going to get to that, but before that, I, of course, have to welcome in my co-host, Christopher Lehman. Christopher, welcome.
How are you doing this evening, Daryl?
Doing great, other than some stuff in the real world, aka the work that we've talked about off the air. But other than that, I'm doing pretty good.
Oh, good. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, glad
Do you enjoy the Bristol dirt race?
I actually enjoyed the Bristol dirt race, although apparently we have gotten to the point that I think I called a couple of years ago when we first started talking about this race. I think probably said it last year, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. Also have Formula One coming back up with the name way too long Grand Prix in Italy, and of course we had some IndyCar Open testing. Rain plaguing that. They got some running in earlier this afternoon. We'll talk a little bit about that. But first, we're going to start with the one race that actually ran this weekend, which was Bristol. And Chris, last year I'll be honest, I was critical of the dirt race and how it was contested, and hoped that we came back to a much better product this year. Well, the rain held off for the most part, except for a couple of spritzes during the race on Sunday night. I still don't know why that was on Sunday night, but there's a couple of things we got to talk about with this Easter race that we'll get into in a moment. But other than the rain and people clutching pearls way too hard over Chase Briscoe doing dirt track things, this race wasn't bad at all.
No, I thought that this was actually a really good showing. And like I had kind of said last week this shouldn't be the marker to judge the race on, and probably good or bad. But the fact that they came out and had such a good showing first thing, these teams are very good at what they do, and next year's going to be better, right? These teams, they get better all the time. And so this year was really good. It was significantly better than last year. I think they learned a lot. And I don't know if it was the rain that they had been having, over the past couple days and week or so, that really helped the dust factor. Because I remember last year, I mean, you lost track of the cars in the dust, and this year they seem to have learned how to manage it really well, and how they came to figure it out, I don't know, but I think they did a fantastic job with track management. And then, the drivers did what they had to do. They put on a great race. It was entertaining. We saw some great racing throughout the entire field. It was nice. The only time that playing follow the leader, in terms of TV broadcast, we always do it in NASCAR. Mm-hmm. And at a track like this, it's fun, right? Especially on the dirt, because the unpredictability of the dirt makes the follow the leader fun, right? Most of the time, anywhere else it's just boring. Like, okay, maybe he blows a tire, or something mechanical happens, but rarely do you watch the leader and think there's a very real chance that not only does he slip up, but somebody slips up and causes him to wreck. And I think that makes watching the guy out in front, like we always do, I think it makes it a little bit more exciting, and therefore makes the race a little bit more exciting. And just the unpredictability of it all adds to that excitement factor.
It was a really fun race, but I feel like we've gotten to, and this happens a lot with the NASCAR stuff recently, where they do a change, people like it for exactly 1 year, and then the criticisms start. For some reason, there has been this weird complaining now, and unfortunately, Some of this has to be tied back to the purveyor of the Is This a Good Race poll every week, Jeff Gluck, railing on how we took away the spring concrete Bristol race when first people weren't going to that race, for one thing, due to the weather issues that we saw, especially this weekend with the rain that came down during the Cup race. Two, everyone complained that race was boring and needed to be jazzed up compared to the famous Bristol race, which is in the summer. We do the change, and all of a sudden, we miss concrete Bristol in the spring. I don't know if you watch pro wrestling, but I think it was Kevin Nash that said this. He was interviewed, and if it wasn't, I apologize. I don't remember who said this, but he basically said that wrestling fans are now in the criticism era of pro wrestling, where no matter what you do, everyone is going to complain about something. I think we're at the criticism era of motorsports fandom, especially when it comes to NASCAR, because no matter what they do to try and appease the fans, it's always the wrong decision.
Yeah, and I think that it always will be the wrong decision, right? The people, and it doesn't even matter what sport it is. Like you were saying, it's not unique to motorsports that fans complain, and you get, in the college football, right? There's not enough playoff teams. They need to expand the college playoff. And in the NFL, I mean, pick a topic and you can find huge swaths of the fandom losing their minds, particularly over Colin Kaepernick. And that's as political of an issue as there is. And NBA, there's no shortage of criticism there. And it's, with NASCAR, we've come to the point where it seems like they can't do anything wrong. They do everything wrong. They can't do anything right. Yet somehow, for some reason, all these people who stopped watching when Dale died happen to be pretty up to date with current events, which is strange because I haven't watched it in 21 years.
Right, because NASCAR died with Dale, remember?
Yeah, and they stopped watching it back then too, but go Ryan Blaney. And I swear to God, I saw a comment too, that a tweet a while ago, like probably 2 weeks ago, that said NASCAR died with Dale. I haven't watched it since, and then go Ryan Blaney. So figure that one out. And but no, people are just always going to complain about something. NASCAR can never do anything right. And I'm here to say that NASCAR could be doing much worse. It is it is not that bad. And it's a vocal minority of fans that are unhappy with everything from Bubba Wallace being in a car to the dirt race to everything. I mean, and we're not exempt from it on this show. We talk a lot of shit about Texas Motor Speedway, but if we're being real, they deserve it. And but we don't complain about every little tiny detail. And I think that's the kind of culture change that NASCAR is going through right now.
Well, we complained about the 550 package, but again, that was necessary and objectively the right decision to move away from, given how the 670 races have been outside of a couple this season. But the one complaint is, well, if they're going to do dirt, do it at a real dirt track. Y'all, there is not a dirt track on this planet that is prepared for a NASCAR Cup Series race. Eldora and Knoxville are probably the only two tracks that can run a Xfinity Series race. But there is no dirt track with the infrastructure hotel-wise, in amenities-wise for the VIPs, concessions, bathrooms, the grandstands, parking, the roads getting in. There is no dirt track in this country that is prepared for that. Do you remember the first? You remember the first Kentucky race, right, Chris, where they had the people parking on the highway?
Yeah, that rings a bell. Yes.
Yeah, basically the race that killed cup racing at Kentucky, unfortunately. It's going to be like that times 100 trying to get into a cup race at a dirt track.
Oh yeah. So this is what would happen. NASCAR says, we're going to Eldora, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know for a fact that every single person that goes to that race is going to be screaming on Twitter about one thing that wasn't perfect and how NASCAR shouldn't be going to podunk dirt tracks in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
That's what's going to happen is, what are we doing? There's no infrastructure. I had to drive 2.5 hours each way to get to my hotel room. And I got stuck in the parking lot because it's not paved. It's dirt parking, and the bathrooms were full because they only have 5 stalls, and it just every little thing just every little thing, or they had porta potties instead of you know what I mean? It's just literally every little thing about that race would get nitpicked apart, and then NASCAR would just be like, okay, fine, we're not going back. And then those same people would be on Twitter talking about how ridiculous it is that we're not going to a real dirt track. It's,
I'm looking at this satellite, and I don't want to turn this NASCAR section into dumping on the fans every week, but it's conversations that we see on Twitter, and we come on and talk about them, and this was one of the conversations after this race. And I'm looking at the satellite picture of Eldora. So the only thing next to that track is the Wabash Conservancy District Structure Reservoir and someplace called Cabana Guys. The only major roads is State Route 118, which is bisected by Route 18. There are a couple of 2-lane roads in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. And you want to have 60,000, because if it's a cup race here, it's going to be about 50, 60,000 people that want to come. You are not putting that many people around Eldora. They're not going to be able to get in, for one thing. And I don't know how they're going to get them out. And Eldora, I know they've had major dirt track shows. The Dream is there. And people say, well, they can handle big shows. No. The biggest dirt track race does not compare to what goes down in a cup race. Like, I've been to Dover. I've been stuck in that parking lot for 3 hours trying to get out. And that's even with them taking the grandstands out. Like, there is a lot more people and a lot more things that they need when the Traveling Cup Road Show comes into town. And a lot of these local dirt tracks that you'd like to see a cup race at, they don't got it. Just gonna be real. They don't got it.
It would be, I think saying an NFL team might be a little overdoing it, stretching the metaphor out, but this is like a D1 college going to your high school and playing a game.
That would actually make more sense, because some of those D1 schools get more than NFL stadiums.
But this is Alabama Crimson Tide going to some podunk high school in the middle of nowhere and bringing their whole bandwagon of idiots to say, "Roll Tide." No offense to the Alabama fans, but you guys, Roll Tide is insufferable. But it's the equivalent. To take a D1 college program, take it to your local high school, and that is what you get when you take NASCAR to a small dirt track that is not equipped to handle that. I mean, not even just the fans, but you're talking about dozens upon dozens of motorhomes. And think about all that camera equipment. You're talking about probably a dozen or more trucks, tractor trailers, but just with equipment, broadcast stuff, microphones, wardrobes. I mean, you're talking about, just massive amounts of infrastructure. And, sure, there's some space around the track, but I think the Eldora parking could be taken up just by the infrastructure NASCAR needs to operate a race. And
to be fair, they did do truck races at Eldora, but that's the trucks.
yeah, and they do not quite have the same size posse that follows them around, right? They don't need as much. This is why Formula One requires a designation to be able to handle a Formula One race. It's not just about the fact that the races are on top of each other. There is so much into being approved to host a Formula One race. And to host a Super Bowl, you have to go through hoops and bounds and prove. On paper, we have X amount of hotel rooms within X amount of miles radius. We have X amount of restaurants. We have X amount of this, X amount of that, parking. And it is a whole thing. And NASCAR, I'm not sure the inner workings, but I'm sure that to become a NASCAR track, you have to have a similar packet or an application where NASCAR says, what do you got for hotel rooms? What does the infrastructure around your place look like? What does your parking look like? What does this look like? And I'm sorry, but Eldora does not check off all those just due to location and size, and not many dirt tracks, if any, can truly handle a NASCAR race in the sense of checking every box. Sure, they'll check a couple, maybe even half, maybe even 3/4, but they will never check everything that's required to host a NASCAR race.
Yep. And Knoxville Raceway, where they had the trucks. I mean, Knoxville's in the middle of a neighborhood, which I'm surprised they haven't knocked that place down just looking at where it is. Like, there's not a lot of places to stay around there, and that's fine when it comes to the Knoxville Nationals or, when the trucks come in. Completely different animal when Cup is coming in. And the Knoxville parking situation is even more dire than Eldora. So,
and we're
talking something that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and we're talking NASCAR, right? Which has reputations, however you want to view them. Yep. But like Knoxville, where they're kind of like Daryl was saying, in kind of a residential area, they are not going to want NASCAR coming into their neighborhood and disrupting them. Look at Formula One, right? Miami just denied the local residents' appeal to have the race canceled. Just on Monday, just this Monday.
And that fight's going to continue because it's the same thing that happened here in D.C. when we had the race at RFK Stadium, although that was a much worse idea than what they're doing at Miami.
But this is how it is, though, is that the local residents do not want the show, right? Your dirt track is not the show. It is a show, but it is not the show. And that is what people do not want, is the disruption of the show.
Yep. And with all that being said, let's actually get into the race. Other than the whole debacle at the beginning, because they have not figured out how to run this track in for Cup cars yet, I thought it was a lot of fun. You saw the lines changing. They actually put water down on the track between the stages so it didn't get all dried out, dusty, and nasty like it did last year. And you actually saw these Cup cars put on a pretty good show. No, it was not a World of Outlaws quality dirt show, and if you were looking for that, what is wrong with you? But I had a lot of fun, but at the same time, I don't know if I want to do this more than once. And I put the poll up this week to ask folks, should NASCAR expand on their dirt offerings after the last couple of years in Bristol? And from the poll, vast majority of folks said no. In fact, 72% of respondents said NASCAR should not expand the number of Cup races on dirt. I tend to agree. Personally, I don't like that it's a points race. I think I've said it should be the all-star race. But I think for this, I know NASCAR said it's going to stay around for a while. One is enough, I think. I don't want to see this go out to like 2, 3, 4 dirt races. Because at the end of the day, this isn't a dirt series.
Yeah. I think that it's fun and personally I like it as a points paying race. It's it's just it's a fun concept, a fun thing to do. And unfortunately I missed the beginning of the race, Daryl, so I didn't see it. But I think the obvious thing that we're skipping over is did we get a boogity 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 let's go racing? Because we didn't even mention the return of
Right.
DW.
DW was back, and unfortunately, I also missed the very start of the race, so I do not know if we got a boogity boogity boogity. We probably did.
I have to
Look it
assume.
up. We had to, right?
I'm pretty sure I shed a tear when when for his final boogity boogity boogity.
Mm-hmm.
I think I shed a tear when he said it. I don't remember, but I feel like I probably did. But I love DW as I think most people do.
We did get it. I just went and looked at it. We did get a boogity.
I assumed we would.
Yeah.
How could you not?
I know. We missed you. We missed having DW in the booth. Although, to be honest, it was time.
Yeah.
It was time. But it's nice to have him back for these one-off appearances. So, but no, we got a boogity.
We get good. Dale Jr. next week.
Yes, that's gonna be a lot of fun. I don't know the coup that they pulled off to make that happen.
So apparently he was supposed to do it. He was supposed to join Fox for one last year or the year before, which if he had done one last year with Jeff in the booth, I think that would have been fun.
Yes.
But either way, so he's gonna join Clint and Mike Joy this week, and it's going to be a good time. I'm excited to see because you know that Dale and Clint are drinking buddies and they got just more stories than you could imagine.
Yeah. It's going to be fun to have DW it was fun having DW. It's going to be fun to have Junior up there in the booth with Clint Boyer and Mike Joy. Junior has really taken to the media side of things after his racing career, for better or for worse, and it suits him extremely well. And he's already going into the Hall of Fame as a driver. Let's just be honest. Well, he's already in the Hall of Fame as a driver. He's probably going to get back in as a broadcaster as well. So,
if he sees it out, for 10 years or so, I can definitely see it.
Yes,
I could see Jeff Gordon possibly coming in too.
Probably, but I think Jeff is going to probably get back in as a team owner, as he is now being molded into that role to be the heir apparent to Hendrick Motorsports.
Jeff should pick up the pencil and pen or the pencil and paper and go in as a journalist too, right? Just get the quadfecta or however many different ways you can get it.
Hall of Fame. But anyway, back to the race. We're not going to touch on 2311's day because I will blow a freaking gasket at this point. Y'all have seen my tweets. Y'all know how I feel about that team right now.
And
but
it wasn't a strong showing for Trackhouse either.
No, it wasn't. Our newest teams on the block kind of strong. Well, Trackhouse was 1-2 at one point, but the dirt got into the radiators or got into the engine and just screwed them all up.
Yep.
And that's something that the teams will have to look at going forward is keeping the dirt out of the intake because, newsflash, racing engines or dirt track engines don't like getting dirt in them. But sorry, were you going to say something?
No.
Okay. But it was fun, and we got to see Chase Briscoe spin and almost win. Him and Tyler Reddick were battling. Tyler looking for career race win number 1. And Chase tried to pull the slide job. Couldn't get it done. And guess who was there to back into a win?
I like your terminology.
Mr. Kyle Busch backs into win number 60.
It's an
which is
interesting
ironic.
choice of words, Daryl.
Well, I just remember a certain driver won earlier this year and beat a certain Kyle Busch, and Kyle Busch got mad and said that person basically had no talent and always backed into his wins. But surprisingly, Kyle Busch hasn't had that great of a season, has more clips as radio sweetheart than wins. Was actually not tripping over himself. It was a distant third until the leaders took themselves out, and Tyler Reddick couldn't close the door and in time. He just kind of snuck up there and only led like 600 feet of the race. But just making observations. Nothing really to glean from that. Nothing at all.
Reddick deserved the win just from his save.
Yes.
If nothing else, the fact that he was able to spin that car around and get going so quickly, he deserved to win for a lot of reasons. But yeah, no, Kyle Busch wins. If anybody follows me on Twitter, they know exactly how I feel about his quote, specifically saying a win's a win, doesn't matter how you get them. Well, it mattered a couple weeks ago, didn't it, Kyle?
Yeah.
But yeah, I have nothing ill to say about what Briscoe did, other than the fact that he really botched it. Like there's botched slide jobs, and then there's that. That was just and it was and the only reason that where I can give people the argument that it was out of line is because Briscoe knew it wasn't going to work. He was too far behind, and all he did was wreck the leader. And now I'm changing my own opinion live on air, but I am now of the belief that Briscoe was too far behind and that it was just a dirty move. So there you go, folks.
I don't know if it was a dirty move. I've been to dirt tracks. I've seen it's what happens at the end. You throw it in there and you hope it sticks.
But he was too far back. Reddick was already halfway through the corner when he came through. Reddick was not quite on the apex, but he was turned into the apex, and he was probably already, he was already gliding through the corner when Briscoe came in. You know what I mean? Like Briscoe was just a little too far behind for it to be, defendable is what I should say. If he was, a car length back, absolutely, but he was like 4 or 5.
Yeah, if he basically went in there to do the 8 tires is better than 4, or 8 tires are better than 4 corner to try and get through there, and unfortunately, it just didn't work out, which is fine. It happens, but I'm not going to go as far as to call Briscoe a dirty driver like some folks on Twitter are. Was it a dirty move? Probably, but NASCAR, we don't really, I will say NASCAR, we don't really assign blame for accidents, at least the series doesn't. But my biggest takeaway from that wasn't the move, but how respectful both of them were after the race.
It was almost disappointing.
You're not wrong. I feel bad for saying that because we should be setting a good example for kids. But I wanted to see a fight. I wanted to see them go at it. But they're like,
not
Briscoe
even necessarily
was like, that was my
fight,
fault.
but I wanted to see somebody get up in somebody's grill. Chase or Tyler Reddick's team, I would have to say, like the team themselves had to have pulled him aside and said, "Look, man, the way that he just was like, yep, I get it, man. Totally understandable. We're cool." Getting out of the car, that conversation is for Tuesday, right? But when you get out of the car, you need, and it's something that actually Dale Jr. said on the download, and I forget who he was talking to. I don't remember. It might have been Clint. No, Kyle. It was when he had Kyle on. Mm-hmm. And And Dale said, like, you were in the position. It was right after you wrecked me. Where was it that Kyle wrecked him? I don't
Richmond.
remember. Richmond. And it was like a couple races later. Dale's right on him, and Dale said, like, I want you to know that it was nothing personal, but like if I didn't wreck you, my fans were going to, like like I would have had hell to pay. And Kyle's like, no, I get it. And Kyle's like, when you were behind me, he's like, I knew you were gonna do what you had to do. And he goes, I didn't hold it against you. I knew that you had to do that to retain any type of favor with your fans. And that's kind of almost what I would have wanted to see out of Reddick is like, it's all good, but you need to show your fans who have been with you that you care. You got wrecked. You had the win, and you got wrecked. Like, you need to, in that moment when Briscoe comes up to you, you need to be upset. You can't hug it out and say, well, next time. Tyler Reddick, you might never be leading. You might never be in the lead on the lead lap or on the last lap of a race ever again in your career.
Yeah.
How many? It's if you look at the statistics of people that won one NASCAR race and then never won another one, it's huge compared to the number of people who've won one race to two and above. That 1 to 2, that number drops significantly. And with Reddick, I mean, I'm sure he will have I'm sure he'll get a win in the Cup Series. I mean, he's a 2-time champion, Xfinity champion, and you don't win those for nothing, out of luck, especially 2.
Right.
And so he'll get a chance to lead a race, but for some people, that was the only time they would ever be leading a race on the last lap in their career. There are probably 100 people that won one race, and that's all they ever won. And that could have been Tyler Reddick's one race.
Yeah, he needed to go after that. And I know some guys just aren't fighters. And ironically, the 2 guys that got into it are 2 guys that aren't fighters. And it was actually pretty odd to see because everybody was expecting for a fight and they just talked it out and went about their way. And that actually gained both drivers some fans looking on Twitter. But it's Bristol, guys. At least act like you're mad at each other.
Yeah, especially for, just in that moment.
Yeah. Hopefully we will, we'll get to, hopefully next time both of them will show a little bit of fight, but they've definitely showed the fight on the racetrack, just not out of it. So we'll see. But we're going into Talladega. This is where you don't want to see people getting into a fight.
So can I just say something real quick, Daryl?
Go ahead.
So and I don't know how up to date this is. I assume it's fairly up to date. I'm trying to look right now. Yeah, it's got Ross, Chase Briscoe, Ross Chastain in it. So it must be fairly up to date. But 200 drivers have won a NASCAR race. 134 have won 2 or more. So you're talking 65 drivers won one race in their entire career. 65.
Yep.
The 134 have won 2 or more races.
It's really hard to win Cup Series races.
Yeah.
So they're heading into Talladega this week, which a couple of teams need a lot of help if they're going to make something of their season. 2311 right at the top of that list. Also, Brad Keselowski, after becoming the example of what not to do with the NASCAR Next Gen car, Chris, who else do you think needs to come out of here, not just with a good run? Who needs to come out of this race with a win?
Someone who has the potential to win, which at a plate race, I guess everybody does. But if I'm looking at who's got their best chance to win and make the playoffs on Sunday and who deserves a spot in the playoffs, I'm looking no far further than your boy in the 23 car.
Mm-hmm.
If he's going to get a win, it's probably coming here.
Yeah. With how bad this season has been, it's got to come here.
Yeah. I don't think they've got it anywhere else right now. Now later in the season that might change, but they 23-11, I don't want to say Bubba individually or Kurt individually, but as a whole, that organization has issues, and I don't know how they solve it, but they need to. Mm-hmm. I mean, in terms of the regular season, we're close to halfway, or did we hit the halfway mark yet for the regular season?
I think we're still pretty ways off because it's 36, right? We're getting close to it.
Well, for the regular season, it's...
Oh, yeah. Regular season is 26, so we're getting close to that halfway point. I'm going to do some math while you...
I think we're at 10. Are we at 10 yet?
We're at 9, so this will be 10.
Yeah, so we're a third of the way through the regular season then.
Yeah.
So, and 23-11, they've got 2/3 of a season to pull it together and try to scrape up something. And my guess is they get, if they make the playoffs, it's going to be, it's got to be with a win, and it's going to have to be a plate race.
Mm-hmm.
But systematically, they need to figure something out.
Well, they've only got, I would say 2 more plate races, but they've actually got 3 more now that Atlanta is effectively another plate race. But it's unfortunate that we're here again with this team where we thought they'd be doing much better, and instead they're once again going into a situation where the only place they can really win is a plate race, which for the first year, fine, that's acceptable since it's the first year of the team, but we expected them to progress this season. This team has regressed instead. I mean, they added a second car, and Kurt is 21st, and Bubba's the worst in points he's been in a while. He's down in 23rd. This is not where this team was supposed to be.
No, they were supposed to be in the mid to low teens. I think if we're figuring on building off of next year and what a realistic expectation was, and it's something that I floated a couple weeks ago that, are we getting a LFR Furniture Row type of situation where it seems like if you get aligned with Joe Gibbs, I mean, you don't do as good as maybe you would be if you partnered up with Hendrick or Penske or somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
Or even RCR for that matter. I know that Denny and Toyota have a deep running and Joe Gibbs as well, but Trackhouse took huge steps this year.
Yeah.
And is that to do with the fact that they're partnered up with Chevrolet, who has a vested interest in having as many cars as they possibly can do good? Whereas it seems like Toyota almost protects Joe Gibbs and makes sure that their organization is on top.
Well, you think the team that is owned by another Joe Gibbs driver would be getting, support. And it feels like, listening to the transmissions and listening to how Bubba and them have talked, it almost feels like they put the C-teamers over there with them, and it's showing with how those cars come to the track, with how they deal with issues, or in this case, how they deal with the person being down, because remember, they're down Booty Barker for a couple more races, or actually after Talladega, due to the team not being able to put on a tire at Coda. And now, I don't know who's the crew chief right now, but they just can't get it. It's not working, whatever they're trying. And I just don't know what they can do at this point other than jettison half the team and try again. But this can't continue. It really can't.
Yeah. And you know, it's one of those things. They need to figure it out. If they need to do an organizational shakeup, then that's what they need to do. Remember, 2 years now, Penske played roulette with all the crew chiefs. Everyone got a new crew chief, and it pissed the drivers off. But they also got results. And maybe that's what 2311 needs to do. Sometimes you need to stop and reset the floor, right? Yep. You need to gather your thoughts. You need to come up with a new game plan. You need to, if something's not working, you need to figure it out. And after 9 races, 2311 can't be saying, well, we've had crap luck or this or that. There is something systemically wrong in that organization. And, you know, and the thing about it is we always knew that these two teams were going to be compared against one another, 2311 and Trackhouse, right? Last year, 2311 looked great. And we were saying, Trackhouse, what are you doing? And this year, you know, these two teams both make a step in getting a second charter, getting a second driver. And arguably, you'd look at 2311 and say they have the stronger driver lineup. And everything about 2311 says that they should be better than Trackhouse, but they're not. And that means something. That means something.
And Kurt's legacy is what it is, so I'm not really worried about him. It's Bubba. I'm worried about him and how he's going to be perceived. And if you want to know why, go look at the mentions in any story written about Bubba Wallace. This team has to be better, and they are failing at being better, and it's unacceptable. And I need Michael Jordan to take this personally and start making some moves, because this cannot and should not continue.
I got a question for you, Daryl. And we are jumping so far down the hypothetical train, and we got 15 minutes left. We haven't even talked Formula One, and we probably should.
We'll get into it after this, so we'll make this be the last point.
But do you think that there is a chance in the next couple years that, you know, possibly with, you know, Kevin Harvick or something, or do you see Bubba moving away from 2311 if they do not give him a car capable of winning a championship, similar to what Red Bull is in shaking themselves to death about Max and the competitive clause in his contract? Do you think Bubba moves on if they don't give him a championship quality car?
Well, part of me wants to say no, because if he leaves, there goes the team. But at the same time, I've listened to the transmissions. He's done. Like, mentally, he's absolutely done. And Larry B is right. They need to be better now. He's done with the whole situation. And if it doesn't get better, I could see him looking for a way out. Because the kid has won at every level save Xfinity. And he was improving in Xfinity when the team got shut down from under him. But he's come up to Cup, and he spent the first 5 years at RPM. That doesn't, you know, he was in Cup, but he was just an also ran. Then he jumps over to 2311, a team that was supposed to be better, and he's even worse. Bubba's got to be looking for the exit, either to go race something else or another Cup team at this point, because he just can't keep continuing to do this. The struggle, he's a much better driver than the cars the last couple of years have shown. And if the equipment is failing him, I see him leaving. Yeah. And that might be taking the team with it.
I don't know if it would take the team. I definitely think that they've got the staying power with Denny and Michael Jordan, but you lose some sponsorship money and it comes down to a Rick Hendrick situation where Jordan might have to bail him out with sponsorship. And while they search for somebody and maybe, in a really that's life kind of situation, maybe Bubba ends up at Trackhouse in a couple of years if Suarez doesn't, put together what, Ross Chastain is definitely showing Suarez's weaknesses, because he's taking the same car and running towards the top. And not to say Daniel's not, he's had some crap luck, but if it's more the driver than the car, they're going to move on, and that could open the door for someone like Bubba to move over to Trackhouse in the next 3-4 years.
Yeah, Suarez is worse. His weakness is he has no racing luck. I mean, that kid, he should have had a win by now, but everything that can go wrong has for poor Mr. Suarez. But we got to get into Formula One because we're right up against it. But we're coming into the
the whole thing.
Now I've got to bring the whole thing up because I don't remember it by heart. Go away.
So while you're doing that, news broke today that Ferrari has signed Carlos Sainz to a 2-year agreement, which brings him through the 2024 season.
And ends the Verstappen to Ferrari rumors.
Ends those rumors, specifically, as I said about Bubba, leaving for competitive reasons. There is a clause in Max Verstappen's contract that allows him to leave the team if they do not give him a car that is suitable to win a driver's championship. And I believe that clause can go into effect after the 2023 season. So he would be able to find a new home for 2024, which is part of the speculation of Ferrari not wanting to give Carlos Sainz a 2-year deal. And all contract negotiations as of Tuesday had completely broken down. And then on Thursday morning, I wake up to a notification that Carlos Sainz had signed a 2-year deal. So that's your news in a minute.
Yeah. Surprising how those talks broke down and all of a sudden there was a contract. But gotta love the F1 rumor mill. Okay, I've gotten the name up. So the Formula One Rolex Gran Premio del Made in Italia they've added crap to this. Hold on. The Formula One Gran Premio del Made in Italy e dell'Emilia Romagna 2022. I hate whoever came up with this name with a burning passion. That is this week. And as I said in the summary, it is clearly now a 2-horse race between Ferrari and Red Bull. Mercedes, they cannot figure out their porpoising issue. They have to have a good weekend. I don't know how they're going to do it. Maybe with this being a shorter track, the issue won't be as prevalent. But we're 4 races in. They're nowhere closer. They are going to lose touch with the lead pack. I don't think they're going to slip into the midfield battle at all. But they're going to be a distant third to Ferrari and Red Bull if they don't get something done this week.
Absolutely. And I was reading this week that everybody in the paddock noticed that Red Bull solved their porpoising issue on day 2 of testing, and in Barcelona, not Bahrain, but in day 2 of testing in Barcelona, Red Bull figured it out. And they still haven't said what it is exactly, other than they've remarked that the rear end suspension of the Red Bull sits higher than almost everybody else on the grid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's possibly something, but somebody at Red Bull said that they literally lucked into figuring it out. Right? It wasn't some grand design by Newey or anything like that. It was literally a lucky adjustment they made, and they found it out immediately. Like they said, end of day one, they knew what it was, what caused it. And if Red Bull can figure out this fuel issue, it's not an engine issue, it's a fuel issue. Mm-hmm. And if they can figure out this fuel issue, then they take the fight right back to Leclerc and Ferrari. But as of right now, I mean, this is Ferrari's championship to lose. And it's realistically Red Bull's P2 in the constructors to lose. Because like you said, if Red Bull can start figuring out how to finish a race, they're going to Ferrari and Red Bull run away from Ferrari and Haas in P3 and 4. But there needs to be a couple things that happen for that to happen, and whether they do or not remains to be seen.
Larry B says, if you say the title of that race 10 times fast, it'll cover the duration of the race.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much at this point. And that Made in Italy part was not there the last time I had to read that. So
we found that Larry B is a big Portugal guy. He's been playing F1 2021 and likes running Portugal, and I'm curious, Larry, and throw it in the comments. But have you raced Paul Ricard yet? And what are your thoughts on that? Because that's personally my favorite track.
I like driving Paul Ricard. I think we had this conversation, and I kind of lied, but
I think last week we had this conversation.
Yeah, I like driving Paul Ricard. I do not like watching that track at all, and I don't know why. Because the way it flows on the game and how fast it is, you'd think it would be a great race, but it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's because there's not really a lot of there's not a lot of technical sections.
Yeah.
Right, and I think that's what it comes down to. I think good racetracks have a good technical section that, there's a lot of, I don't want to say skill, because driving an F1 car is skill, but there's a lot of finesse involved. Finding just the right line can really make all the difference. And Paul Ricard just does not seem to have that technical section that separates the pack from the pack, like, two drivers from the rest of the pack. It's all pretty well evenly matched throughout, and one of the easier tracks I think they go to.
Yeah. But still fun to kind of play on the game, but watching it isn't that
Absolutely.
great. So he's 3 races in. It is the schedule from last year. Larry, you'll get this year's schedule in F1 2022. Going back to going this week in Italy, I'm not saying that name again. Red Bull also has to step it up. I don't know what's going on with these reliability issues. You hope they've got it figured out, because 2 of the first 3 ending in DNFs for Max Verstappen, he said it himself, he's not even thinking about the championship right now. 3 out of the first 4, I'll put it this way, it's not out of the realm of possibility seeing what happened last year. But being 75 points in the hole, that does not feel good. And that does not sound like a points differential that this year you're going to be able to come back from. Of course, what I mean by 75 points is the amount of points Verstappen completely missed out on from DNFing. If he's missing 75 points heading into Miami, he's going to have to be next to perfect the rest of the year to stay in contention. And that's a weird thing to say only 5 races into the season.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, he almost with the gap he has now, he has to basically win every race the rest of the season if realistically Charles Leclerc is going to be on the podium every race, which at this point there's no reason to think he won't be. But Max has to win literally, we're 3 races in, so he needs to win the next 20 races in a row to overcome that gap and win.
Yep.
And I don't want to say anything is impossible, but it's pretty darn close.
And it's not even because of his fault. The car just doesn't stand up. And
I mean, Mac, if there's a driver that can do it, that can podium every race, win 19 and 20 in a row, it's Max. Last year, he set the record for most podiums ever in a single season at 18 out of 23 races last year, I think it was. That's a lot of consistent production. And I know that Mercedes and Red Bull were in a class of their own, but Lewis Hamilton didn't get 18 podiums last year. Sergio Perez didn't get 18. Valtteri Bottas. Literally nobody in the history of Formula One has gotten 18 podiums in one season. So it's not easy, no matter how good your car is. It is not easy to do.
And everyone knows at this point, I've got no love lost after with Red Bull and what happened last year, but this is not the way I would want to see Verstappen be defeated in his title defense by the car failing him. You know, it's not his fault that the car won't stay together. He didn't build it, so.
Max has retired from the race from P2 both times.
Yep.
So just like Charles Leclerc, Max right now would have 2 silvers and 1 gold.
Yep.
And
it'd
the
be
gap,
a much different situation right now.
Correct. It'd almost be a fun title fight, but until Max can start, well, what I should say is until Red Bull gives Max a car that will finish a race, we're looking at a Lewis Hamilton literally every other season that's ever happened since Lewis Hamilton's been in Formula One.
Yep.
You know, is we're looking at a runaway championship that can be in August. We already know who's got it.
And Verstappen currently sits 6th in the points with 25. George Russell, surprisingly, 2nd in the driver standings with 37.
Now, Michael and I think that old George is going to outscore Lewis this year.
I think if they can't get this car to Lewis's liking, I also believe that George is going to score more points. But Lewis isn't going to take it lying down. He's going to do what he can, but he's got a braking style that this car doesn't agree with, and it's showing in the lap times. But we are at a minute, and we're going to end up going over to get everything done with this show. So I'm going to do a truncated version of the closing. I just want to say thank you to the Southern California Warriors semi-pro football team for sponsoring us. Make sure you follow them on social media. They're at SoCal Warriors on Twitter and on Instagram and Facebook at Southern California Warriors. Also, get in with the Patreon on iesportsradio.com. Starts at $5 a month. That gets you a shout out on all 32 shows. And higher tiers include the iSports Radio merchandise, access to the podcasting university, and a chance to be featured on our flagship show, The Defining Moment. And also get your mock drafts in for our mock draft challenge. Get your picks, all 32 in the first round, over to Let's Wine _IE Radio. The winner, or the person with the most correct picks, gets their choice of an iSports Radio hat or shirt. Now, before we go, we, of course, have to do nearest the win. We only have IndyCar and NASCAR this week. With the points, I currently lead 15 points to Chris on 5 and Michael on 3. We're going to Talladega. Last time for NASCAR, I picked Kyle Larson. Chris picked Christopher Bell. Michael picked Denny Hamlin, although he's not here this evening. I'm going a bet against my better judgment, but this team won here last year. They have to win this week. I know I'm probably jinxing myself, but Bubba Wallace makes it 2 for 2 at Talladega.
Okay. Who was your other pick?
You picked Bell last week.
No, you just picked NASCAR.
Yeah. I'm not doing Formula 1 yet.
Okay. Well, you said IndyCar at first,
Sorry.
so you really had me confused. I was like,
yeah, IndyCar doesn't race till May 1st.
Yeah, that's what I was like. Daryl, I think one of us is wrong here.
I was wrong.
Okay, NASCAR. I am going to say, Ryan Blaney lets me down every time I pick him, but I'm just going to do it until he wins. Ryan Blaney.
It'll hit eventually. That guy, he dominates far too many races to not win. He's going to break in eventually, I hope. F1, I'm not saying the name again. I picked Leclerc last time, got the 2 points. Chris picked Perez. Wisdom would say pick Verstappen, but I just can't trust that car to stay together. I think I'm going to go with Carlos Sainz. I think he's going to jump his teammate and pick up a win off the buoy of that new 2-year contract.
Now, I think a red car that dons the name Ferrari wins this race, but I do not think that it is Carlos Sainz.
Mm-hmm.
I am going with Charles Leclerc to pick up win number 500 this season.
That's going to be fun. Cannot wait to see it. And remember, if you want to get your picks in.
And we got a sprint race this weekend, too.
Oh, yeah. We also have the sprint race. I hate the sprint races. That's probably why I didn't remember it, because I don't like remembering those. But chance for some double points or points and a third, I guess. Points and a half, whatever they're doing. This could be a big one if our winner ends up doing the double this week, and that, if Verstappen's car fails, that could be a problem going forward. So,
sprint race might be Verstappen's only chance to pick up points this weekend.
Yep. We will see. We will see. You can watch that race, of course, on ESPN. But that's going to do it for us here on The Extra Mile. Remember, follow The Extra Mile at The Extra Mile IESR, and make sure you follow all the iSports Radio pages on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Chris is at Fiji Sims. I'm at DK Jr. 12. Next week, we are going to be taking a little bit of a spring break. However, we will be back the very next week. That will be, as soon as I get my calendar up. You're only going to let me do it on the main screen, aren't you, Windows? We will be back May the 5th to catch you up on everything that we may have missed. That might end up being a little bit of a longer show. So make sure you catch us then, May 5th, 8 p.m. But for now, we'll see you guys at the next green flag.
And may the 4th be with you.
Good night, everybody.